In this lesson, we're going to address issues that you run into when you try to print a very large drawing on a small piece of paper. For example, you might have a 60-foot long house plan that you want to print on a 11 by 17 piece of paper. I chose 11 by 17 because that's the largest size paper that's commonly used here in the United States. So we're going to deal with that particular subject, 11 by 17 inch paper. Before we get into that, we want to address the mouse feature, the mouse wheel feature for zooming for those that have a wheel mouse. If you notice that right now I can't really read these letters down here, this text down here. So I can just simply use the wheel mouse and wheel in. Notice it's enlarging, but it's enlarging around where the mouse is. So if you put the mouse right there, it will enlarge around that spot. And you can read what the text says. So the wheel mouse either zooms in or zooms out based on where the mouse is. Move it up here, it zooms in and out from there. So the location of your mouse determines where the zooming takes place if you're using the wheel mouse to zoom. If you get confused, just go back up here to the auto zoom, which zooms every element of the drawing that's visible. Every visible layer is included in this drawing pane here. This version 3 training program was created using version 3.4.6. So I want to point out a little anomaly here. If you're bringing in old files, we're bringing this old file, tabloid template, was created by version 2.2.2. And if we go up here and we go to the drawing preferences, you'll notice that the dimension settings, these are large numbers, we'll explain that in a minute. But the drawing units, notice the paper units are millimeters, yet the drawing unit is inches. So I don't know if this is an oversight or what it is, but right now they don't match. So the first thing you want to do if you're bringing in an old drawing is check this before you start working on your printing concepts and make sure that it's in the same units of measure. So we'll make this inches. By doing that, when I select the page view here, it's in inches. It's not in millimeters, but notice it brought it in as millimeters, so it's 279 millimeters, which is about 11 inches. 279.4 millimeters is 11 inches. So there's a problem here, okay? Because now we're saying it's inches, it's 279 inches, that's a pretty big piece of paper. So you might want to go back and set that to 11 by 17. Another way to do that is on the paper size choice, you can come down here, right here, and select the tabloid ANSI B. That will be 11 by 17 inches. The scale down here, that is simply how the print preview is going to scale the drawing to make it fit on the paper. And we'll come back to that. So I just want to make sure that you did in fact check your drawing units, make sure the paper units are inches, because if they're not, then it's going to be confusing. If it's an old drawing, it'll be confusing anyway because it won't fix the numbers here. It won't fix these numbers by itself for some reason. Hopefully that's been fixed in later versions. This tabloid template was designed to fit 11 by 17 inch paper, and it was created so that people could easily do their house plans within this space here and draw a reasonably sized house on this single sheet of paper. So that's why we chose this. So let's take a look at it for a minute. We've already preset it. We know our paper is 11 by 17. Let's go up here and do our little preview here. Preview of that page. And there's some issues here we got to look into. Notice if I zoom in on it right here, my crop marks are on the very edge of the paper, which is what I wanted them for. I know I can't print the crop marks. I wouldn't, in this particular case, I wouldn't want to. I just wanted to make sure that the drawings fits the paper properly. If you're in a situation where you need to crop marks, then the crop marks have to be inset by the printing requirements. So let's take a look at that for a second. We go up here and look at our drawing preferences, multi-pages. These are the glue margins. Some people call these borders. I call them borders. So most printers will print down to 1/4 of an inch, no problem. So right now they're set for 1/2 inch. That's pretty excessive. So sent to printer margins, they seem to think most printers can print within this limits of the edge of the paper. So we'll go with that and see how that it changes, how it looks up close. You notice this blue line right here. Let me zoom all back. There's a blue line right here, and that is the no print zone. Show paper borders. We've turned off the borders now. So now if I zoom in, you see that the paper borders is the white area of the drawing print screen. So this part of the paper will not be printed on, these dimensions here, which we saw up here in our edit window. In the previous printer video, we talked about most of these other controls up here. We didn't address the scaling factor, and that's what we want to do today. Scaling is very important when you're doing large drawings on small paper, because scaling can really drive you batty if you aren't paying attention. So let's dig into this. First thing to notice here has to do with the text printing size. You notice this text printing is very small, but you can still read it if you're looking at a normal piece of paper. This is legible, and it was designed so that it would be. Now if we take a look at the untitled document, which is the default that Qcad version 3.4.6 opened up, and look at his drawing preferences, you'll find the dimension settings for the text height is 1/8 of an inch, and on down the line here. If we go back to the other drawing, the tabloid template, and look at its drawing preferences, you'll see that the dimension settings are quite different. The reason instead of being 1/8 of an inch, it's 8 inches. So that's really 8 times 8 is 64. It's 64 times larger. So if we go back to the page parameters here, we'll see the scale is 0.015625. If you multiply 8 inches times 0.015625, you get 1/8 of an inch. So the text is the same size as it was by default in a much smaller drawing, but you had to consider that in this large drawing. Otherwise, the text would have been 64 times smaller, and there's no way you could read it when you print it out on this 11 by 17 paper. This is one of the major issues we want to talk about. When you're scaling a drawing, you need to scale your text also if you want to keep it readable. Otherwise, it won't be legible and has its consequences because it's not legible. Your dimensions wouldn't be legible either, not just text. So this text size is a consideration when you start scaling your drawing to make a large drawing fit on a small piece of paper. Here we are back at the tabloid drawing. I want you to notice that I want 3/16 of an inch to equal 1 foot. I decided that was a convenient measurement. That way I could use a normal measurement device to measure the actual wall dimensions on a house plan if I wanted to measure right from the printed paper. So I set 3/16 to 1 foot. If you divide 3 by 16, you get a decimal, and divide that by 12, you get 0.015625. That's how I got the scale number. I wanted to scale it so that 3/16 of an inch on the paper was equivalent to 1 foot in the drawing. So that's where this number came from. You can also let Qcad automatically scale it, and when it does that, it goes a little crazy with the digits. I want you to notice there's a problem here. This is right justified display of the scale. That's not very useful because I can't see the primary digits. So you got to either hit the home key or find some way to get on the left side of that particular drawing. So I'll click in the box, hit my home key, and now it's really 0.1515. Notice it's a little bit larger. But that screws up my scale. Now my 3/16 of an inch does not equal 1 foot. That's the reason I chose to set the scale myself. Just remember, if you see a bunch of numbers, no decimal point, this is right justified. I think it should be left justified, but it isn't, so you have to scroll to the left-hand side to see the most important digits of the decimal number. Notice that when Qcad scaled the drawing, they scaled it such that my crop marks are also on the printed part of the page. Remember up here we have the borders turned off, now the borders are visible. So they included the crop marks, so they had to scale it differently than if I didn't include the crop marks. So my crop marks are weird crop marks. They're just guides to help explain paper sizes. And most people wouldn't use crop marks in that way. So this scale would give you the exact crop marks on the paper if you were using crop marks. But remember, I can't get 3/16 of an inch equals 1 foot if I let Qcad auto scale it. So I can sacrifice a little bit of the paper by getting a scale factor that I can work with. Hopefully this explains things that will help you understand how to get your printout of your drawing if it's a large drawing. Qcad makes it very easy to scale your printout. Remember, the print preview only scales the print preview. It doesn't affect your actual drawing size at all. It doesn't affect the scale of your drawing. It only affects the scale of the drawing that's placed on the paper. So keep that in mind and you can't go wrong.